everyone, this is Shinso here. Now, whenever we last left off, this is whenever Bakugo had somewhat gotten over a lot of his trauma, and I went through 2 of the 3 parts of the sports festival, and I was getting into the battle section this time. Now, because Ayama is not included in this what if, the person substituting him I want to change around the characters a lot, so I can give some shine to them. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. Dog started barking. Anyways, I'm going to be changing up the character palette for the battles. Now, because of that, Shinso and Uraraka will be changing places, along with the fact that Invisible Girl will be in here, so she'll be taking disgusting Ayama's place. Everyone probably knows at this point that he disgusted me, because I kick him and Mineta out of my what ifs. Now then, she's taking his place. Shinso and Ochako are changing places, along with yeah, that could probably work. Anyways, what the heck? Okay, now then, after that, this is whenever people would announce that Izuku Midoriya is going up against Ochako Uraraka. Now, whenever people hear about this, they're just thinking that this is not going to end well, and she is probably going to be badly injured. And a lot of people are shouting that that's not fair, and they need to have a medic on standby. Deku would have immediately looked into the crowd and actually stared at the person who said this. Now, as soon as he did that, they would have felt a chill up their spine as they would be paralyzed by fear. Now, that is whenever Deku would just walk back into the ring as Ochako would walk in with him. He would say that she should forfeit before he hurts her or before anything bad happens, because he can just throw her out of the ring with telekinesis. But he will give her a fair fight, so he will not use his abilities. Now, because of that, she would then say that, well, that's not very unique or anything like that, as she would then immediately start charging towards Deku. Deku would just turn on his light strider and just immediately start teleporting around the ring, and it would get to the point where he would immediately just put a portal behind her or in front of her as he teleports and just teleport her out of the ring. Or he could just make a small portal and throw a punch through it, hitting her in the back of the neck, knocking her out. But he would basically knock her out effortlessly, getting her out of the ring, and people are commenting that that was actually less brutal than they thought. Todoroki versus Sero. That doesn't go well because Todoroki would actually use his fire in the fight, as his mom would cheer him on. And he would be trying not to die of embarrassment. Now, this is whenever Kaminari would actually lose to crap, I need to find this girl's name again. He would lose to her. He would win against Mei. Toru versus Mina. Toru would win. And she could just immediately just throw her out of the ring by just snapping her fingers. Now, Tokiyami versus, well, you guys know how this fight goes. Bakugo. Tetsu versus Kirishima. That fight would go similar to in canon, but Kirishima would actually win. Instead of them both knocking each other out, Kirishima would have actually been the last man standing, so there would be no arm wrestling match. Now, Shinso, I think this is how you pronounce it, Shinso would actually be fighting with Bakugo, and he would immediately comment on how that he's done some talking with a lot of people in 1B, and they remember that he had a mental breakdown on his first day of school. And they're actually, some people are actually asking about that, well, saying that he had a mental breakdown, and he would then shout to the entire crowd that he is apparently the reason why Izuku Midoriya has awakened the rest of his quirks. And he's shouting that he heard a rumor that you blasted him in the face as a child, actually forcing him to manifest the rest of his quirks. But the UA event was a different story, because they heard that he broke down crying and actually had to go see a recovery girl. Bakugo was actually warned about his ability, so he's trying to, well, not talk, because he's actually a lot calmer. He would immediately walk up to him and actually just fire an explosion, knocking him out of the ring. But he would have fired a controlled one, not a willy-nilly one. He would have just blasted himself towards him like he would fly, and he would immediately just tackle him out of the ring. Now, Todoroki versus Deku. Deku would immediately walk into the ring, or he would just fly in or teleport in, whichever way would look more menacing. And he's telling Todoroki that this is going to be fun, because he doesn't remember the last time they had a good sparring session. Todoroki would say that he does, because he would say that he does remember it, but Midoriya still seems to have a few screws loose after it. Now, what would happen for this fight is Deku, he's essentially trying to rush Todoroki to use his amp ability. And anytime Todoroki would just try and dodge it or anything like that, Deku would always teleport a punch, actually basically getting through Todoroki's defenses. Todoroki would then immediately start blasting him with a lot of ice, trying to knock him out of the ring. That cheap trick won't work on Deku. He would immediately get encased, and he would immediately just blast away with his ice, or his own fire, not ice. He doesn't have an ice quirk. Jesus Christ. Brain, work please. Anyways, after being worn down, Todoroki would realize that his stamina is very low, so he's going to have to try and finish it all in one final attack. He would then tell Midoriya that he's been working on something that he doesn't think would actually, he thinks will actually finish Midoriya off and allow him to win. This is whenever Todoroki would immediately begin charging up both of his sides, or he would just immediately start charging up his fire, and it would actually start turning a bit blue. Midoriya would see this, and then he would see Todoroki actually bring up his left arm to actually start charging up his ice. Now, as soon as Midoriya would see him bring up his left arm, he would immediately realize what he's doing. He would then just start turning on his amp, and immediately just start weaponizing his whole body, along with his fear. He's trying to use all of his quirks at once, and it's almost breaking his mind. He's using his IQ to try and figure out a good way to do this. He's trying to use amp to increase every physical ability he has, and he's using fear to try and produce a projection that might actually be able to not stop Todoroki, but he's trying to use an emotion. He's trying to get an emotional response from Todoroki to try and actually get him to stop. But he's just making himself more scared and scared and scared. This is whenever Deku would actually just start using fear at full power. As I tried explaining it in the last video, but If you guys have ever seen Kuwabara's spirit energy from Yu Yu Hakusho, because I know I've done that what if, and people really, really like it, I'm going to be bringing it, well, not bringing it back, but I'm going to try and watch some of the anime and release an episode of it for pretty soon, but it's going to be a bit difficult. But basically, fear, it works with weaponized to actually use Deku's fear in his body, because of how fast his mind can produce it. He can actually use it to actually, if he were to cut someone with it, with his body layered in fear, or his projections layered in fear, then he can actually get them to spike their own fear. But Deku's trying to use it along with his weaponized ability, so he's just shooting black spikes out of his chest at Todoroki, and Todoroki would just put up ice walls against this. Now, after doing that, Deku would immediately just start lighting himself on fire, as his skin would start to burn and he's actually sparking with fire and electricity. People are confused and scared because essentially his eyes are red, he's glowing and flowing with power, almost like a Super Saiyan, but he's not a Super Saiyan. It's the best way to describe it. And he's nearly covering himself in fire, but he's got a lot of smoke coming off of him. But he's barely sparking any fire. Todoroki would then not understand what he's doing, as the spikes that Todoroki's ice would have encased are actually just sparking with fear and black lightning, along with the fact that they are melting his ice. He is then confused as these things would start moving further and further into his ice, actually getting closer to him. This is whenever Deku would immediately teleport behind Todoroki, saying that it seems that his new quirk is working, or it seems like he's getting a hold of his new quirk. As he would be falling towards Todoroki, he would then just start layering himself with armor with his weaponized ability, which basically means that his muscle tendons can all fuse together, and he can weaponize them in different ways. But if he just layers them over each other, he can create like a form of chainmail armor. And doing this, he can actually shoot smaller spikes out of his body. Now, this is whenever Deku would immediately just start shooting spikes as he's still up in the air towards Todoroki. And not only do these spikes are producing small layers of smoke, they are actually coursing with black lightning. Now, fear and his amp ability are actually the reason why the lightning is black. Because fear is basically a dormant quirk, but unlocking it actually helped Deku increase its power. Well, his amp ability got a boost whenever he unlocked it, because it's essentially unlocking the second half of a quirk. Basically, cut content. Now then, after doing this, Todoroki would actually get stabbed in the arm and actually just start screaming at the top of his lungs. People are confused, saying that was crazy, what's going on? As they would then see Todoroki just start going crazy, throwing his ice everywhere. He's saying that I'm never going to be like you, you can't control me anymore, and he just keeps throwing ice over and over again, towards the same direction. He's just throwing them at Midoriya, but he just would keep unfreezing himself by just lighting himself with smoke. Because amp basically increases the user's body heat, and actually is very dangerous. Because if you were to try and shoot somebody with a sniper rifle, and the bullet would come anywhere near the area around their face, if they were to have their body heat on, as soon as the bullet would make contact, it would immediately just melt into liquid metal. Now, that is essentially what amp is. But you can also throw body heat in different directions. Now, this would essentially mean that it's a more basic form of the Human Torch's powers, but it's not as advanced, because it's essentially your own body heat. You're not covering yourself in its fire. Now, Deku would then tell Todoroki that he needs to calm down, and this is whenever he would just start screaming Endeavor's name. His actual name. Todoroki's mom is horrified that one of this quirk is doing whatever Deku's done to him, as Deku would just throw him out of the ring and knock him out. Now, what happened was Todoroki was seeing Endeavor in the ring. Mental trauma. Anyways, after the match, Deku would actually have to... Well, he wouldn't have to apologize, but he would apologize to Todoroki, saying that he didn't mean to put that much fear into him, and he's still trying to work out the kinks to it. Todoroki would just say that it's fine, and he just didn't expect to see that asshole's face again. Now, the rest of the matches would be similar, with her losing to Ida. Toru would actually win against Dark Shadow by just reflecting light off of her body like a flash grenade, making Dark Shadow weak enough to actually just throw Tokoyami out of the ring. Bakugo versus Kirishima. Kirishima will be fighting with Bakugo and Deku. Eventually, he would break out. Well, he would try breaking out his strongest... Well, the way he thought about it is, if he takes a bigger beating, he might get stronger. So he would actually try breaking out his unbreakable mode. He would break it out, and he would only be unstoppable for about 10 to 15 seconds. And before he could actually knock Bakugo out of the ring, this is when Bakugo would have been able to turn it on him, immediately just blowing an explosion. He would have just blown an explosion upwards, sending himself up, and actually just knocked him out of the ring. Now then, Deku versus Ida. He would just tell Ida that this isn't even going to be fair, and he would immediately blitz him in speed, knocking him out of the ring with his enhancement quirk. Ida would be confused, as he essentially only has a bloody nose and is laying in a pile of rubble. TFS joke. Insert TFS joke here. Anyways. Toru versus Bakugo. Bakugo is commenting that she essentially has the same quirk as Midoriya, and it's a bit weird, but he's just gonna knock her out, and then him and Midoriya can actually have a fight in the finals where he can finally get over it. Or finally come to peace with his demons. Toru would say that, sadly, you'll have to get your fight later, because she's going to fight him in the finals herself. As she would then begin charging up One For All, and immediately just knock him out of the ring, after bum rushing him. Now, this would actually work, but Bakugo has his gauntlets, so let's say she would at least have to use 15 to 20% of One For All. Now, Deku versus Toru in the finals. These two would step in the ring, and this is whenever President Mike is saying that these two quirklets are our final competitors. They are going to be fighting for the right to be the number one in the sports festival. President Mike is just telling... Well, he just keeps saying this, and Aizawa would eventually shut him up, saying that it's rare that Midoriya has 10 quirks, but it's weird how Toru only has 2 quirks, because she was supposed to have a minimum of 3 or 4. And how it's not only are these 2 very rare quirklets, but they seem to be very different on the spectrum, but still very similar, because 2 of their quirks actually do match up. People are confused by what they mean, and this is whenever Deku would immediately tap on President Mike's shoulder, saying that he can clear that up. He would then grab President Mike's mic as he would be shouting, Give me the mic! Give me the mic! Anyways, that is when Deku would explain that two of his quirks, both of them are essentially the fact that he can turn himself invisible, along with any sound he may even produce, would be rendered useless. Toru's quirk was the same like that, but after she awakened her enhancement quirk, he essentially taught her how to use it and how to regulate it throughout her body properly. And this is the quirk they both share. Now then, he would immediately just teleport back into the arena as people are confused as to where he went, as he would just appear visible to everyone and confuse them. Deku would then start saying to Toru that this is going to be pretty fun, but how about they just use the enhancement quirks and show them off to people quite a bit. She would agree to this, saying that she didn't think people would ever even recognize her, so she might as well just show off quite a bit. Right, Midoriya? He would shake his head, and they would begin fighting. Now then, she is actually fighting at 20 to 25% of one for all, and Midoriya is actually fighting towards his... Well, not... I was going to say he's fighting at around... Let's see. A first generation enhancement that actually collects electricity. Let's say he's at least around All Might's level with the enhancement quirk, because it essentially just sucks electricity anytime he uses it, so it could actually just stockpile power. Now, he's actually been a bit weaker since his body now has the idea of self-preservation. So he's really at around 80% of All Might's level. Well, Prime All Might, which is still above All Might. Now, because of this, him and Toru are fighting, and he's actually got a bit of an edge on her since his speed is greater and his strength is greater. But she has a bit of an edge with the fact that Midoriya is trying not to hurt her very much, which she can kind of use to her advantage. Now, these two are fighting, and people are watching as they're eventually just hopping around the ring and actually barely visible. They can just see the streaks of lightning colliding, as they can also feel the shockwaves from each one of their punches just hit over and over again. And this would get to the point where both of these two would break away from each other, and they would nearly both slide out of the ring. People keep cheering, saying that this is the best thing they've ever seen since last year. With that one weird guy, or that one weird blonde guy. Now, Deku would have heard about this, and he would have shook it off in the heat of the moment. This is whenever Deku would just immediately tell Toru that this has been fun, but his adrenaline is kicking in quite a bit. So he has the edge on her. This is whenever she would say that she doesn't think so, she plans on winning, and actually start going up further and further to actually 40 to 45%. Deku's saying that that's not a smart idea, as she would immediately bum rush him, and as he would throw a punch, Black Whip would awaken. Now, this kind of confuses her because she thinks that this is Midoriya's lightning, and as soon as it would actually stab through Midoriya's body and somewhat lift him up in the air, as she would have moved backwards, it's confusing her. So she's trying not to freak out, or she just keeps freaking out, and everyone's confused. This is whenever President Mike would just be saying that this is not possible. She awakened a quirk, or she awakened the quirk during the fight. As I was saying that this is not good, as they would immediately start running down, and heroes would try and actually stop the fight. But Midoriya is actually he would just teleport away and immediately appear behind Toru as he regenerated. Now, both of his eyes are glowing red, as he would tell Toru that was that was pretty crazy, but it's time to end this. As he would immediately just turn his hand into a cinder block, or into a blunt. He would turn his hand into somewhat like a blunt object and just punch her in the back of the head, knocking her out as Black Whip is still going crazy. As soon as this would happen, he would have picked her up and taken her to Recovery Girl. And everyone's kind of confused, and this is whenever President Mike would say, well, I guess she has a third quirk now, as Aizawa would just immediately hold back his urge to grab the mic and beat him to death with it. Now, that is where I'm going to be leaving off of here, and I will be explaining, or hopefully I can do another part before I hit 300, because I really was hoping I can get this what if finished before getting to 300, because I still need to research a bit of Mad Max's powers and abilities. So I will be doing that, and I will be trying to respond to comments for the first hour, so that I can see how people liked this what if. Now, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and peace out, guys.